name is Manjura Jeev Kanchan. I'm a research associate with Water and Environment Vertical at National Institute of Urban Affairs, NIUA. I'm a postgraduate from Masters of Landscape Architecture from School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here addressing each and every one of you as part of the Yuva Mahotsav, which is NIUA's Youth Fest organized as part of the International Youth Day event. So it's a known fact that the youth are the future of tomorrow, and which is exactly what it needs to be as well. But more than that, the youth are a resource that is brimming with so much potential, and they are right at the disposal of any nation, which is why for a country like India that has around 65% of population as just the youth alone, it becomes all the more important that we learn to exploit the youth and make the best use of them as a resource. And in each field, the youth of India are reimagining systems, infusing creativity and a commitment and harboring a commitment to forge a vibrant and sustainable future ahead. And me, as the youth of today and future of tomorrow, my message as a landscape architect to each and every one of the viewers is that sometimes not intervening is also a solution. At times, the solution to tackling multiple challenges in a site or in an area might lie in just resolving one. Now, this might sound a bit confusing, but if I've confused and puzzled you enough, let me take you through my master's postgraduate thesis, which will kind of delve into this concept and explain a little more about what I had hinted earlier. Before I delve more into my master's thesis, a small question. How many of us are aware what is the national aquatic animal of India? In case you're not, it's the Gangetic River dolphin. ज़्यादातर लोगों को terrestrial national animal, terrestrial bird, ये सब पता होता है. But the aquatic animal of India, not many know. और इसके साथ साथ एक और क्वेश्चन ये है, Gangetic River Dolphin and Zoonoses. How are they linked? Zoonosis मतलब infections of animal origin like malaria, dengue and the very famous or rather infamous COVID pandemic. How are they connected? More importantly, how does Gangetic riverfront development come into the picture? इसके साथ साथ I'm going to emphasize on one more point here, that is save the Gangetic dolphins to prevent another pandemic. अब 3-4 सवाल हो गया, तो it's more complicating or puzzling here at the moment. अब इसको और less obscure और थोड़ा और simplify करने के लिए I'm going to take you through my thesis, that is the somber case of an odd triad, dolphin, man and zoonoses. Now, if you actually look in, the idea of One Health has become more important than ever before, considering the fact that we've just right now come out of this global pandemic, COVID. And if you actually draw a parallel between the triad that I mentioned earlier and the World Health Organization, WHO's Venn diagram of One Health, you will see that each triad corresponds to one element of this Venn diagram. And pandemic, epidemics and plague are not something new. They've always been around for a very long time. But why now this is such a cause or a concern that we need to address is because the fine line that separates these natural landscapes and the human interventions are slowly spilling over. The microbial processes that used to be prevailing in the natural landscapes, they are spilling over due to these anthropogenic interventions such as deforestation, intensive agriculture, etc. So it has now become all the more important that we start to understand how can we design and develop zoonotically resilient blue-green infrastructure landscape. So the question that is kind of emerging at this point while I was working on the thesis is that how do we attain the concept or achieve this concept of zoonotically resilient landscape? We have talked about climate resilient landscapes, we talk about healthy landscapes, but how do we make our landscape more zoonotically resilient? Along with this, another question that is emerging is how do we ensure that the Gangetic River, which is renowned and revered for its purity, stays the same way for future and more generations to come? So, for this, a lot of studies were undertaken, and इससे एक thought that emerged, or the secret that was understood, is that all the problems can be solved by just ensuring the count of the Gangetic dolphin. अभी ये थोड़ा weird लगेगा, but I'll elaborate this a little more. So to understand this line, there are two things that emerged out of my studies. एक ये है कि in the natural ecosystem जो होता है उसके पीछे एक वजह होती है. Nature has a way of working and dealing with things. The second point that emerged out of my studies was that resilient species exist as long as an ecosystem is healthy and vice versa. With this knowledge base, I translated this understanding to my site in concern, which is the Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary, the only notified riverine sanctuary as per the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 in India, and it's solely for the Gangetic dolphins. ऐसा एक भी sanctuary नहीं है across India which is solely for the Gangetic dolphins, and it also falls under the IUCN category 4 protected status, and it's also an important IBA, important bird area site in India as well. This is situated in the Bhagalpur district of Bihar, India, and this entire 60-kilometer river stretch of Ganga is a wide and deep river stretch which is renowned for not only the sanctuary but also a constantly changing river planform and expanse due to the altering river geomorphology. And because of this diversity in the planform and the geomorphology, there's a huge rich repository of biodiversity, flora and fauna in that area apart from the Gangetic dolphins. Now, सुनने के लिए इसमें काफ़ी सारे अच्छी चीज़ें हैं और हमें ये भी लग रहा होगा कि अगर डॉल्फिन सेंचुरी है, वाइल्ड लाइफ सेंचुरी है तो सब सही होगा, बट that's not the case here because a lot of issues are being faced from the sanctuary perspective and also from the perspective of the people that live there. For instance, it's a flood prone area, the dolphin count is drastically decreasing, there's a question of urban flooding, erosion, and a lot more. So if we need to understand the concerns here, हमें थोड़ा पीछे जाना होगा in time, that is, to be precise, 200 years behind in time to the origin of river Ganga in Bihar. When Ganga river first originated into the state of Bihar, it was a very thin, small, narrow stream that over the course of years slowly expanded and increased in size as it started receiving more and more water influx from numerous other rivers. So now how does this come into emphasis here? If we look at the stretch, the 60-kilometer stretch that flows within the sanctuary, it actually adopts a braided character. Ganga river adopts a braided character right from the state of Bihar till West Bengal, where it actually releases out into the ocean and the sea. So if you look at that braided extent, a portion of that extent is what we see in the Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary. So it's entirely a fluid landscape, a landscape of flux, and therefore the ecological fragility and the sensitivity is a lot higher here because of this braiding. Secondly, a braided river, having identified that it's a braided river completely depends on how well its sustenance processes take place, that is abrasion, sedimentation, flooding, etc. So if there's an imbalance in any one of these processes, it can trigger a domino effect through the multiple issues that we saw or we discussed earlier. Both of natural and anthropogenic or human issues will only aggravate the natural processes or the natural issues that we see earlier. So amidst all these sensitivities and the fragility that we were discussing earlier lie the Gangetic dolphins, the national aquatic animal of India. So these sentient gentle beings They are mostly considered solitary, but the reality is they're so finely interspersed with the other key indicator species like the smooth coated otters, freshwater turtles, etc. एंड नाउ ये सब सुनने के बाद ऐसा लगेगा कि अगर हम सिर्फ गैंजेटिक डॉल्फिन्स को सेव करने के लिए हम जो भी करेंगे दैट विल बी मोर देन इनफ, बट इट्स नॉट सो बिकॉज द सस्टेनेंस ऑफ ऑल द स्पीशीज दैट कॉल द सैंक्चुरी अ होम are an outcome of the efficient and natural working of this braided river ecosystem. तो वापस सवाल वही है जो ट्रायड हमने पहले डिस्कस की थी, डॉल्फिन, मैन एंड ज़ूनोसिस, आर दे कनेक्टेड? I would still continue to say yes. So to understand this entire ecosystem, the approach that I had taken was based on two strong assumptions. पहला assumption ये है कि whatever was happening, the issues, the positive, the negative, everything within this Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary, it's an outcome of activities that are happening upstream and downstream. So if the entire proposal that we are discussing right now needs to work, it's only possible if issues are addressed both within the ecosystem as well as outside of this dolphin sanctuary ecosystem. So this entire proposal has been set in such a way that it targets the holistic revitalization of this particular region, so that it's not just the Gangetic dolphins that are being conserved but the other species as well. So with this, the concept of rewilding was formed. Rewilding is basically the process of ensuring a more natural scenario, something that was earlier there in the wild before any sort of human or anthropogenic intervention happened. So under this umbrella of rewilding, 3 R's were selected. First R is renaturalization, second one is revive plus recover, and the third one is rediscover. So each R basically addresses a broader goal with certain micro level design interventions so that this broader umbrella of R is achieved. And along with this, there is a comprehensive landscape development plan that was conceived along with a circular design program that actually decodes the permissible and possible activities or the proposed activities that are possible in this entire sanctuary extent. So let me delve into each of these R with a certain comprehensive simplicity. To begin with, renaturalization. Renaturalization is basically focused on restoring that equilibrium that once existed with the natural ecological processes. So in simple terms, it's basically live and let live. So under this renaturalization, we had taken up a set of interventions that you will be seeing on your screen. The next one is revive plus recover. So in revive plus recover, the entire intent was if we need to renaturalize and bring things back or propose something new for that matter, we need to ensure that the ecosystem that we are dealing with is healthy. So revive and recover basically focuses on reviving and rejuvenating the problematic areas within that sanctuary through different strategic interventions. In rediscover, it is all about focusing on how can we intervene in such a way that it's not hampering with the riparian rights of the people that are staying in that area, but at the same time every species holds an equal right to that river that is a home to not just the species but the humans as well. So iske liye bhi strategic interventions were proposed, which you will be seeing on your screen. Apart from this, the next component that was talked about in the triad was zoonoses. With these 3 interventions, we talked about Gangetic dolphins and man, but zoonoses has not been addressed. So to target this entire idea of zoonotic resilience, a scientific design-oriented approach to controlling the prevailing zoonoses in that area was developed, which is known as zooproflaxis. Zooproflaxis concept is basically introducing buffer faunal species as an alternative meal option for the mosquitoes. अब बिहार के केस में most of the zoonosis is of mosquito origin. Mosquitoes are the vector in this particular region. So studies prove that mosquitoes usually prefer to feed from any species that has a lot of sugar. So natural plants that have a lot of sugar in them are a good source for these mosquitoes generally. It's when they are not able to access it, that is when they start looking at humans as a more easier option, or when the boundaries between the natural systems and the human ecosystems blur, that is when mosquitoes start targeting humans. So zooprophylactis focuses on widening the gap between the mosquitoes and the humans by adding more faunal species like buffaloes, cows, etc. Along with that, strategic planting and other interventions like using urban forests, flower fields, pollinator fields, etc. were developed in this entire idea of zoonotic resilience. And the basic intent or the thumb rule here is that more sugar content in the species that are introduced, the more options or the more buffet options for the mosquitoes to choose from. So this is the entire zoonotic resilience idea that was covered in this particular proposal. So the entire project, crafted on the principle of One Health, calls for a united front at a very multidisciplinary or a cross-sectoral level. If the proposal is to succeed, the successful implementation of each and every intervention or each and every strategy that has been discussed until now needs to happen. And it's a combined effort. It's not just the implementation of strategies, but also policies, guidelines, and so much more, which can together help to improve the gangetic dolphin count and at the same time ensure a better quality of life for everyone in that particular area. Now, the pandemic might appear to be gone and out of the picture, but it can always make a return, which is why the project is of extreme paramount importance in this present days due to its scalable nature and the immediate need to pursue the entire idea of landscape development from a zoonotic resilience or a pandemic perspective. And the outcome of such an approach is what we discussed, zoonotic resilient landscape. And in the entire umbrella of youth, it is more important for us to start exploring the idea of healthy landscapes along with the other landscape ideas such as climate resilience and so much more, because it's us who will be living here today, and it's us, the youth, who will be living tomorrow, and it's also us who will be facing the $1 million decision, or once we are handed over the torch, to transfer a healthy and a better planet to the upcoming youth and the future of tomorrow. So the pressure is a lot on us youth, and the adults or the older professionals have already lived their part, and now it's our turn. So the project holds a lot of significance from that angle as a youth, and with this I take your leave. Thank you.